You're all set, Council President?
Yes, ma'am, we are. Appreciate you being here and taking the time to introduce this new event to the public and to the council.
Of course. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ariana Kwiatkowski. I'm the City Attorney. Thank you for attending this informational session to the members of the council and the members of the public. The purpose of this informational session is to educate the City Council and the public about an issue that has arisen between the City and the New York State Office of Court Administration. Throughout the presentation, I will refer to the Office of Court Administration as the OCA, just for purposes of convenience. As will be explained in this presentation, OCA has requested that the City make significant changes to Lackawanna City Court. The administration has been working with OCA to attempt to resolve OCA's concerns, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. I wanted to note that this is an evolving situation, and additional information sessions will likely be necessary as OCA and the City continue to work together to reach an agreement regarding the court space. There will be questions or time for questions from the council at the end of the presentation. I just ask that all council members hold their questions till the end. I thought it would be helpful to just spend a couple of minutes talking about the relationship between the City and OCA, just to give some context to the council and the public. Prior to 1977, the cost of operating the court system, including the salary of judges and court staff, were the responsibilities of the counties and courts where each court was located. So each municipality was responsible for paying court staff. In 1977, that changed. The state took over the court operations, meaning that the state now pays court staff, judges, etc., their salaries, but municipalities are legally responsible for providing and maintaining court facilities. I just wanted to point out the Court Facilities Act, which is another form of relevant legislation, which required at the time it was enacted all municipalities to submit a capital plan for the space provided for court operations. So for Lackawanna City Court, there is currently a capital plan in place. Lackawanna City Court is operated by the state through OCA, so just to be clear, Lackawanna City Court is located in City Hall in the original portion of the building, as we're all aware, but those employees are not employed by the city, and the court really operates the court, OCA operates the court pretty much completely separately from the city. The court does lease space from the city via lease agreement. As we all know, that's pretty much all of the second floor of the original City Hall building, with the exception of the space that we're in today, which is the City Council chambers. The area right now is approximately 8,100 square feet. Under a lease agreement, the city is responsible for cleaning the lease space, performing minor repairs, and performing emergency repairs under certain circumstances. So essentially, the city is responsible for providing the court facilities. We maintain the facilities while the court operates here. And under our lease agreement with the court, the city receives in exchange an annual payment of approximately $68,016. And that payment is, per our lease, is based off of the square footage of the space leased by OCA. One law I wanted to talk about is Section 39 of the Judiciary Law. This is basically that section of the law which provides the municipality's responsibility for maintaining court facilities. What the law says is that municipalities have to provide facilities that are, quote, suitable and sufficient, quote, for the transaction of the court's business. That was at the time the law was enacted, and then for facilities deemed necessary in the future by the court. If the municipality wants to make a change to the capital plan, so I mentioned a couple of minutes ago that there is a capital plan for the court facilities here. And by that I mean capital improvements to the facilities, or OCA requests that a municipality makes substantial changes. Those changes have to be approved by an entity called the Court Facilities Capital Review Board. That's a part of OCA, it's a state review board. It's composed of OCA representatives. What's important about Section 39 is that it explicitly says that the cost of improvements to the court space is the financial responsibility of the municipality. So going back to what I talked about a few moments ago, the court leases the space from the municipality, so leases space here from us, but we're responsible for maintaining the facilities. And the law also says if a municipality is required to go to bond to fund a court capital improvement project, the most OCA will contribute is 33% of the annual bond interest. So legally right now, if the court pursues a capital plan amendment or capital improvements to a court facility, or a municipality goes to the Court Facilities Review Board and says we want to make changes, the municipality is basically on the hook for funding those changes. The most that the court is legally required under the judiciary law to contribute right now, unfortunately, is 33% of the annual interest on the bond. The judiciary law also has guidelines. They are guidelines for New York State court facilities. So these are regulations under New York State law that basically provide specifics as to the facilities for court space and what they should include. For example, the overall appearance of court spaces, the number of courtrooms, square footage for required office spaces. So for example, we have a city clerk here in Lackawanna City Court. These guidelines provide a range of square footage requirements for that for that office space, and general layout of the court space, where the judge's chambers should be located in relation to the courtroom, etc. And those are recommended guidelines that were published by the judiciary. Under the judiciary law, if OCA determines that a municipality has failed to provide suitable and sufficient facilities, or if OCA requests a capital plan amendment and the municipality and OCA are not able to agree, OCA must, under the judiciary law, notify the city's CEO of the deficiencies, give the municipality the opportunity to request a mediation. So this is all in the statute, and this is really the statutory scheme that's contemplated if a municipality and OCA cannot agree on capital improvements to a court space. But what's really significant about this provision is it says that if the parties aren't able to successfully mediate the dispute, the OCA chief administrator can actually direct the office of the state comptroller to withhold state aid to the municipality. So obviously, that's a pretty severe penalty, I'll call it. There are severe consequences for that, and I'll share that in 2025, the city received approximately $6.3 million in AIM state funding and approximately $732,000 in temporary municipal aid. So for Lackawanna, last year we received approximately $7.1 million in state aid. So I just wanted to stress that if we can't agree with the court, or not us, but any municipality, there is a process in place which contemplates a mediation between the court and the municipality. But if that fails, unfortunately, as the law is written right now, the OCA chief administrator can direct the office of the state comptroller to withhold state aid. So one example where this happened quite recently, unfortunately, is Schenectady City Court. According to the Times-Union, which is the local Albany-based newspaper, OCA has pursued renovations to Schenectady City Court in the amount of approximately $13.3 million. I want to point out, Schenectady, I think right now their population is about 3 times the size of ours, and I believe they have 4 city court judges, whereas as we all know, we have 1 full-time city court judge and 1 part-time associate city court judge. But what I've learned in my research is after months of back and forth, Schenectady Mayor Gary McCarthy and OCA could not agree to a capital plan amendment for the court space. And I think this was a result of, conversations spanning a few years, because Mayor McCarthy has been in office for a number of years, and prior to his time taking office. Once they could not agree, Mayor McCarthy requested mediation pursuant to the judiciary law. So it's my understanding there was a back and forth. OCA was made aware that that the parties could not agree on a capital plan amendment. Mayor McCarthy requested mediation, and they did have the mediation, I believe, in October. The Times-Union reported at that time that the mediation had failed, and that OCA expressed its intention to direct the office of the state comptroller to withhold $13.3 million in state aid from Schenectady. In early January, Schenectady received confirmation that $10.36 million in state aid would be withheld from the city. That was as a result of the dispute with OCA. And then at the end of January, the Times-Union reported that Schenectady and OCA had reached a tentative agreement regarding Schenectady City Court, and that once the agreement was finalized, the withheld funds would be released. So obviously I wanted to bring this up because we're here today talking about requested changes to our Lackawanna City Court, which I'll go into in a few moments, and I'll explain what conversations we've had with OCA. But I think everything we've discussed up until this point is very important context for not only our relationship with the court, but also, what the law provides in terms of capital improvements to the space. But I think it's an appropriate time for us to transition into talking not just generally about the law and what's happened in other municipalities, but what's happened here, because that's what we're here to talk about today. So As most of us in the room are aware, the city has maintained and cleaned the court's facilities here for decades and largely without incident. Back in January 25, so last January, OCA wrote to the mayor and asked that the city make changes to the existing court space. And I think at that time they were looking for one additional courtroom and maybe a hearing room. In February of last year, then the city attorney, Don Gahn, responded and basically explained to OCA that given our new city hall project, the city was really not in a financial position to make any significant changes to the Lackawanna City Court space, and basically explained that once the city hall project was complete, the city would analyze its finances and determine whether any changes to the court area were feasible. Excuse me. The city didn't receive any response from OCA for nearly 6 months. So had a communication back in January and February 25. I started in April 25 and I heard nothing from OCA, and neither did the mayor until late summer. At that point, OCA wrote and requested a meeting with the mayor to discuss our facilities here in Lackawanna City Court. We met in early October. At that time, OCA voiced its concerns with the court space, specifically a leaking roof and insufficient heating and cooling systems. At that point, OCA requested that their architect be permitted to do a walkthrough of the space, which obviously the administration had no objection to, and the parties did that at the end of October. In November, OCA's architect sent the city plans for a renovated court space. Again, that was something OCA requested they be permitted to do. No cost to the city. It was OCA's own in-house architect, who I believe is out of New York City, who took a look at the space and put some plans together. Now, in November 25, OCA did send the city plans, which included a significant expansion of the court facilities here. So as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the court right now leases approximately 8,100 square feet. These proposed plans envision a court space of 21,214 square feet. So almost really 3 times the space that the court is currently leasing from the city. And just to give everyone a flavor of what those requests included, they included an additional courtroom, judicial robing rooms, which I guess are separate spaces for judges to put on their robes, offices for additional staff, 4 sets of bathrooms, 3 elevators. I'm not an engineer, but I know bathrooms, restrooms, elevators are very expensive to build and to make those types of capital improvements. And what OCA said when we received those plans was that the changes were necessary because the court had outgrown the space at City Hall. So the city responded via my office, the law department, on December 15th. What the city did in responding to OCA basically was threefold. We took a look at the city's population because the court had basically made a representation that the court had outgrown the space here. So we took a look at our population and pointed out that the population had remained fairly constant since 2000, with an increase of less than 3% through 2024. We took a look at the New York State Court System annual reports. So those are public record. They are published by OCA. Anyone can go and pull those reports. And those reports include case loads, case totals for city courts throughout the state. We pointed out that from 2015 to 2024, so about a 10-year look-back period, the caseload in Lackawanna City Court had only increased 6.6%. I will say I think a majority of that in my analysis of the data was that 6.6% mostly encompassed vehicle and traffic matters. Obviously, as a function as a city attorney, we have the city prosecutor, so both of us are able to prosecute those vehicle and traffic cases. And we do now have a plea by mail program, right, in Lackawanna, which basically means that every person who gets a traffic citation does not actually need to physically be in court. We can resolve it through a plea by email system. So I question whether these numbers are actually representative of the number of individuals who visited Lackawanna City Court. And actually, if we went historically and looked back to 2010, we pointed out to OCA that the city court caseload here actually decreased by 30.6%. We also explained that these palatial type plans are unrealistic for Lackawanna. We do not have the financial means to fund a project at that exorbitancy level, and the cost of the project should not be the responsibility of our taxpayers. Since that time, we have had some back and forth and additional meetings with OCA. They formally responded on January 6th. I'll refer to a building space program over the next couple minutes. That's basically what OCA, the building space program is a list essentially of what OCA is requesting be included in the space for Lackawanna City Court. So in our initial back and forth, there was some revision to the square footage from 21,000 square feet to 15,000. I wrote back, or the city wrote back again, requesting that OCA consider what really is necessary for the space. And without detailing every communication, it really is, the court insisting that there be 2 courtrooms here, that there be several attorney conference rooms. I think at one point there was a request for a law library, which we've never had in Lackawanna City Court. So these were some of the items that we have been going back and forth with the court on. The court has worked with us, and they've come down. Where we are right now is the list of items that the court has requested we include here totals approximately 12,500 square feet. But when we're translating that to dollars, we estimate that the cost of those most recent changes is in the range of $12 to $15 million if you include construction cost and 20 years of interest. Because obviously I think the council is aware that this is not something that the city can fund through current funds available, right? If we have to make substantial capital improvements to the court space, we will need to go to bond for that. So just to stress though, we are still in talks with OCA. We by no means have a finalized plan. We have not agreed to anything. The court has been very willing to listen to our concerns, and we have gone back and forth a number of times, and I think the square footage as it is today is reflective of that. We do have another meeting with OCA representatives the week of March 9th or next week to further the discussion. We will continue to discuss changes with OCA in the hopes that we can agree on a building space program that meets the needs of the court or what the court deems suitable and sufficient, but is also practical for us here in Lackawanna, given our population and given the realities of what we're living with day to day in Lackawanna. The administration has undertaken pretty significant efforts to try to obtain funding for the court project and to come to a resolution with OCA. Of course, we've been meeting with our grant writer. The city employs a grant writer. We're pursuing state grants, federal grants, pretty much any grants that we think might be available for a capital improvement plan to our court facilities. Mayor Iafallo and relevant department heads have spoken with Governor Hochul's office in an attempt to obtain funding for a project that would be of this range of magnitude or the type of changes that OCA is requesting. OCA and the governor's office have essentially directed the city to request funding from our representatives, lobby our representatives to attempt to obtain funding. Mayor Iafallo has contacted a number of representatives, including Mark Poloncarz, John Gilmore, Assemblymember Patrick Burke, Senator Zellner, to explain the situation and request financial support in our efforts to resolve the situation. We've had conversations with John Rivera, Assemblymember Rivera, and Senator April Baskin as well. Senator Baskin has been great. She's been very receptive to working with us. In fact, she has worked with Senator Patricia Fahey, who's out of Albany, to co-sponsor a bill that proposes to amend the judiciary law so that OCA would no longer have the ability to essentially punitively request the office of the state comptroller to withhold state aid from a municipality. So basically what we talked about at the beginning of the presentation in terms of legally right now OCA's ability to attempt to withhold state funding or direct the office of the state comptroller to do so. This bill makes clear that under no circumstances would OCA be permitted to do that. It was introduced into the Senate on January 16th and the Assembly on January 30th. It proposes to completely delete the provision of the judiciary law allowing OCA to withhold state aid via the office of the state comptroller, and proposes a different mediation type process where it's not a mediator or OCA deciding whether or not their requests are realistic or reasonable. I believe it has a court facilities review panel, which would be a representative from the office of the state comptroller, the chief administrator for the court, one member of the Senate, and one member of the Assembly, both who have experience in municipal finance. And then that bill kind of sets forth certain factors that newly created committee would or should consider when evaluating whether or not the court's requests are reasonable. So, obviously, I know that the bill has been referred to the Judiciary Committee in both the Senate and the Assembly, and we'll continue to monitor the bill's status, but I wanted to bring that up today because obviously there are no guarantees, and right now I don't think we have large insight into whether or not that bill will pass. But I know that our representatives have been working diligently with representatives from the Schenectady area to try to change, OCA's ability to withhold state funding. So that pretty much covers the overview or what I wanted to touch on today. I just wanted to stress that, again, this is pretty preliminary, but obviously we want to make the council and the public aware as soon as reasonably possible. And I think we will have to have additional sessions on this project.
Thank you, City Attorney Kwiatkowski, and especially for bringing into perspective this relatively new development as far as the council is concerned, and bringing it to our attention as well as to the public's attention. It's one thing to have the public foot the bill for a much needed and necessary city hall. This additional tax burden possibly, could be catastrophic. And also, on behalf of the council, I'd like to thank you and Mayor Iafallo for bringing into focus some of the outrageous demands that were being made of this city, given our financial circumstances, our population, and the needs of our court. That is not to say that the court doesn't need revamping. It certainly does.
Right.
But the question is, obviously, as you so well put it, to what extent and over what period of time can the city absolutely afford it? It doesn't look like there's room to negotiate that nothing be done, obviously. So I think the sooner we bring this via other means, media or otherwise, to the public's attention that this is out there, not in a negative way, but in trying to work with OCA to come to a fair and equitable resolution of what's being asked of us.
Right.
I think, as you just said, we're going to need more information and more communication with our constituents and with the public at large.
Right.
But thank you very much. And are you open to questions from the council as far as this?
Yep,
Council members, anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I do have one. How long do you think this process is going to take? A year or?
It's hard to say, Councilmember Anderson, because I think we are working with OCA in good faith and they're working with us. And I think the process will take as long as it needs so that we can make sure that we're putting forth our best effort to come to a solution that really is practical for us and our taxpayers.
Right.
And I did, just to the council president's point, want to make clear that with our new city hall project coming to a completion and our employees that are really in this orange extension portion of the building moving to the new city hall, it was always the plan that this building would come down, or not this building, that building would come down, and that we would make repairs to the roof of this building and also heating and cooling. And also there is an elevator that has exterior access that goes right to the courtroom for defendants to be transported to court. And it was always the plan to make those types of capital improvements because, to your point, Council President, there are things that need to be done and we recognize that. But it's just really agreeing with OCA on what is feasible for us.
And City Attorney Kwiatkowski, is it being contemplated at all that any remaining portions of the addition to the original City Hall, could that possibly be used as additional square footage for the courts? Is that feasible?
I think one thing that the administration is open to is allowing OCA to use this space that we're in today, right, as part of their improvement project or part of some of the space requirements that they've requested. But given the structural integrity of the extension building and how it is past its architectural and engineering life, that's not, I think the plan is that building really does need to come down, and that was the plan all along.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I got a couple more questions. You did say that to no cost to the city, their engineers came in and gave you a plan.
Their architect, yep.
Okay. How long did that take them to do that?
So we completed the walkthrough on October 30th of 25, and I believe we got the plans November 15th or 16th, so a couple of weeks, really.
Could we ask them to do, instead of hiring our own engineering firm, could we ask them to do it with no cost to the city?
I don't think that that's something they're willing to undertake because they're not legally required to do that.
So I understand, there was a walkthrough by OCA and their engineers or their architects or something?
One architect, it was OCA representatives
Yeah.
at the 8th Judicial District level, so
Yeah.
just,
I don't mean to interrupt you.
no,
I don't care who it was. My question
Architect.
is, within 2 or 3 weeks, they had plans?
that's right.
Did you notice anybody taking measurements or anything like that?
I did not. From what I could see, it was a visual walkthrough, but as part of the capital plan that I believe that we originally submitted to OCA, there were building plans for this space submitted as well.
And who created those plans?
Those would have been completed by the city way back when. We're going back probably 30 years.
I don't recall that ever. Well, I know there were plans way back when, but nothing as extensive as what they are proposing now.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, the original plans. I think basically they had architectural, very preliminary plans for the space as it exists today. So I was just saying that the visual walkthrough with those, I think, is where the OCA architect, what he based his plans on.
Must be a talented individual.
That sounds more like a wish list.
But yeah,
wanted.
it's well put, yeah, exactly.
They wanted to have 2 jury deliberation rooms, and we've had 3 trials in the last 6 years. I mean, why would they need 2 deliberation rooms?
That's correct,
That's
Councilmember
crazy.
Sirdike. Yeah, and that was one of the items that we did push back on, and we pointed that out to the
Yeah, I saw that.
court.
I read all your stuff.
Right, because, I mean, we want to accommodate the court, and we're legally required to
Right.
some extent, but we also want to point out what is practical for us here. And if you're in a municipality where you've had 3 jury trials scheduled, I think, in the last 6 years, and only 1 jury
Yeah.
trial actually occurring, having 2 jury deliberation rooms with their own separate restroom facilities, I think was the original request, is difficult for us to accommodate.
So, if I may, did anybody see this coming down the pike? I didn't hear anything about this. Since, till last week, Thursday or whatever.
Yeah, I was in a meeting about a month ago, and it was explained to me then.
But to be clear, Councilmember Sirdike, I mean, my understanding is there was a reach out last January, and then the city heard nothing from OCA until really the late summer.
Yeah, I don't really care. I just wondered if anyone else knew.
Yeah.
I thought maybe I was the only one that didn't know this was coming.
If I can, I had heard about this from the mayor and from the city attorney a few months ago. But in all fairness, when I was on the bench, I had discussions with the then executive assistant to the administrative judge here in the 8th Judicial District, going back several years about renovating the courtroom and some of the facilities. It was discussed at that time, the renovations were not that extensive. And in the essence of full disclosure, at that point in time, the court system was willing to do a 60-40 split. The city would, and I don't remember which was which, but one entity, whether it's the court or the city, would pay 60%, the other entity would pay 40%. That is no longer viable,
Yeah.
according to what
You pay
the meetings
a
are.
third of the interest. Wow.
Yeah, that's all they're doing, third of the interest. So
Are these people elected or are they appointed?
they're
or-
appointed.
Oh, by who? The governor, probably?
Well, there's a chief judge of the New York State courts.
Retired guy?
No, there's that
Oh.
position that exists statewide. And, most of the positions are appointed.
Right. I was just wondering.
Yeah,
If we don't have a timeline on when this is all gonna happen, should we be hiring our own engineering firm to start work on this if we don't know how much or?
Yeah, so I think the reason or the necessity of hiring an engineering firm is to put together plans and plans that will work for the space. So we know, what is practical and what is workable here. I don't think that we can or should rely on OCA's, architect or engineer to put together the plans. I think we need to, go ahead.
I think in answer to your question, regardless of whether we hire our own or use the Office of Court Administration's engineering and architectural firms, like Ariana said, we should use our own. However, I think proceeding in good faith is necessary to continue the negotiations with Office of Court Administration. As soon as, if the idea is to delay things as long as possible, that's not going to work.
Yeah, but we'll be paying for an engineering firm until this all happens.
Well, it's not going to happen until you pay for an engineering firm and you start putting together costs and dimensions and materials and such, right?
Right, and we do have the legal obligation to work with them under the judiciary law because, we want to make sure we're working with them and we don't want our state aid to be jeopardized.
Right.
I will say that, and we can talk about it at the council meeting, OCA has money in their budget for that purpose, so for the proposal, a proposal from an engineering firm would be reimbursed by OCA to the city.
You insinuated that in your email, but is that a fact?
Yeah, OCA basically has said as long as the engineering firm works with them, that because they have the money in the budget, they would be willing to do that.
And you also said that CPL has already been to certain meetings?
They've been in some discussions.
Who was paying for that?
We have not paid them for that preliminary work.
Okay, I was just wondering.
I see, from 2015 to 24, it says that we've increased 6.6%. Page 7.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we do the tickets handled through the mail and online, do we know the percentage that's handled?
We don't track that internally. The assistant city attorney / city prosecutor and I actually did start tracking it in the summer, just for our own internal purposes to make sure that, people are being offered pleas on a timely basis. I could do a reach out to OCA to see if they've tracked it, but I think because it is a newer program, historically it hasn't been tracked.
Okay.
They got a sweet deal too. They, what do we get, 68,000? So that's 1,300 a week. We gotta clean it, maintain it, heat it, light
Right.
it.
Yeah,
So
that's
you can't
in
even rent a
the
hotel room for that.
yeah, that's in the judiciary law. It's just based, for any municipality, the payment is based off the square footage.
They
That's
should
rented.
increase that too. Jeez.
And obviously, if we do have some form of an expanded court facility here, that payment will increase,
Well, I know that.
comparatively. But
1,300 a week is nothing.
that is the statutory scheme right now, unfortunately.
Has there been any further updates in the legislation that's been presented by April Baskin?
Not that I've seen, Council President. I know, like I noted, it was introduced in January in both the Senate and the Assembly. But I know that we plan to do a reach out to Senator Baskin's office to see if she has any update. And I'll advise the council accordingly.
Blindsided again.
And any further word from Governor Hochul's office on any help, financial help they could give us?
Not at this time. The mayor and certain department heads did speak with her office, and she really, they were receptive and they understood our points. They did encourage us to go to our local representatives to try to obtain state funding, so that's what we've done.
So this is an ongoing story.
Yes, and I suspect Lou will be here again talking about this project in the near future.
And the law, even if it does pass, won't get signed till, I think, the end of the year.
Right, exactly. And we're not looking to unduly delay the situation with OCA. We're trying to work and negotiate with them in good faith.
Sure.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.